There are places from your childhood that you've forgotten. I don't mean the important ones, like the house you grew up in or your elementary school classroom. I'm talking about the in-between places. A hallway at school, the entrance to a shopping mall, a waiting room at your parents' office, a tunnel at the train station. The places that you passed through hundreds of times but never hung around in. The ones that existed only as temporary waiting zones, or places that would take you from somewhere to somewhere else. You probably haven't thought about these places in years. Yet, if I showed them to you right now, you'd recognize them instantly, and they'd probably look a whole lot like this. You haven't been in this exact room shown in this image, but somehow you have. And the weirdest part, if you were to somehow go back there, to that exact place at that exact moment in time, no one would be waiting there for you. It's the very nature of these places now being gone, of being empty, that they take on this uncanny, strange familiarity, one that feels like it's somehow tied to a distant memory, or even a dream. The feeling is really hard to describe, and for a lot of us blends nostalgia with a sense of longing, but also unease. Back in 2019, an online blog post gave these places a name, liminal spaces. But the story doesn't start there, and the deeper you wander, the stranger they become. What really are liminal spaces, and how do you no-clip into them? Why do millions of people feel the same strange emotion when they see an empty hallway? Why is that feeling so hard to define? What's the psychology behind fluorescent lighting in these spaces? And why does a place designed to move people from one destination to another suddenly feel so meaningful once everyone is gone? Join me as we unravel all this and much more and enter the Codex Legendarium. I'm Shelby Melanson. The super weird thing about liminal spaces is that, by definition, they have no definition, and nobody can actually agree on what the heck they are. If there is one general consensus, though, it's that you'll know one when you see it, and they have a certain feeling, a kind of air about them that provokes this combination of reactions: nostalgia, unease, reliving forgotten memories that somehow feel just a little bit off. And for some, terror. Think about this. Nothing is happening in any of these photos, and yet they affect us so strongly. Why? Entire communities online have been building databases of images for years that try to capture this exact feeling. I first came across the subreddit Liminal Space a little over a year ago while doing some research on what I can only describe as liminal spaces crossed with collective dream worlds that I, and maybe you, have actually been to. Turns out, I found so much on not just liminal spaces, but also the Backrooms and these shared dream dimensions that I have no choice but to split this series up into 3 parts. So, buckle up and get ready to no-clip into one of the internet's newest obsessions that actually, believe it or not, goes back thousands of years. Here's how the Uncanny Valley images erupted online. On May 12, 2019, an anonymous user on 4chan's paranormal board posted a request, looking for, quote, disquieting images that just feel off. Alongside it, a single unremarkable image of what looks like the inside of a slightly grimy house or office building with beige carpet, patterned yellow wallpaper, and fluorescent lighting. By all accounts, this looks pretty normal at first glance. But whether it's the complete lack of furniture, people, the fact that you can practically hear the hum of the rectangular fluorescent light panels on the ceiling, or the fact that it feels like it somehow just goes on forever, that if you walked around the corner at the far side of the room, you'd be greeted with yet another room, and then another hallway, and another, until you realized with a quiet horror that you can't remember how to find your way back anymore. More and more images started pouring into the 4chan request board, with other users sharing images of eerily empty gas stations and empty garages and roads that seemed to vanish into the mist. Sometime after that, another user posted this, quote, "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, and the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at a maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you." All the makings of an excellent horror short story, right? But if you're anything like me, the first question out of your mouth is, what exactly is no-clipping and how do you do it? The term comes from 90s era video game programming and has to do with optimizing a game so that things outside the player's immediate view aren't rendered, saving memory. Turning off clipping basically means turning off the game's ability to detect when you walk into walls. So no clipping equals being able to walk through walls. As far as the backrooms, walking through walls stands for walking through a glitch into another reality, dimension, or time space. As for how to enter the backrooms, well, according to the lore anyway, usually it involves accidentally bumping into or getting pushed into a wall. And instead of falling into it like normal, you really fall into it, as in through it. And suddenly, you're in. The original 4chan board has long since vanished from the web. The only reason that we even have parts of it left are thanks to archives and preserved texts from posts like this. But think about it. That single nondescript image and what came after it spawned an entire legend of an entire terrifying world. A secret labyrinth that if you accidentally fall into, you may never get out of it. This realm is called the Backrooms, and it's become one of the internet's most famous creepypastas, or anonymous horror stories that circulate around the internet until after a while, tracing them back to their origin gets a little fuzzy. Let me explain. Looking at that yellow-tinged, grainy image, one of the first things that you might ask is, okay, where did this image come from? And that's just it. At the time the Backrooms legend came into existence, and for quite a while after that, nobody knew. I hear you, so you're telling me that the freaky, otherworldly, dimensional photo that inspired all of this just appeared out of the ether in 2019. Well, yes, but also no. 2 years ago, in May 2024, a Discord server dedicated to all things Backrooms used the Wayback Machine to hunt through internet archives and by some miracle, traced back the origins of the mysterious image. They found it tucked away on a webpage from March 2003. And as it turns out, all those extra, seemingly unnecessary walls and doorways are because the building was actually a furniture store. Specifically, one at 801 and 807 Oregon Street in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. As for the distinct lack of furniture, well, it was apparently going through renovation after being bought out, hence the empty floor plan. Based on a blog post detailing the whole renovation process, internet sleuths discovered that the original infamous photo was taken with none other than a Sony Cybershot camera under the original file name DSC00161.jpg, sometime in 2002. And as proof, here is the exact same room from a different angle. And here's the then tweet, now X post, from one of the main hunters. As for today, well, that renovation ended up transforming the entire space of the building into, would you believe it, an indoor model car racetrack. So the room that spurred the entire urban legend, at least when it comes to surface looks anyway, is gone. But the find didn't deter the Backrooms enthusiasts at all. Inspired by the original 4chan board still, Reddit communities like the one I mentioned before, our Liminal Space, and later in 2021, a rival subreddit, our Liminal Spaces, started popping up, constructing troves of images that not only fit the aesthetic, but also provoke that same otherworldly, outside space and time feeling, the same as the original Yellow Room. That search expanded to YouTube when creator Kane Parsons, or as he's known online, Kane Pixels, posted the first of a series of short films, taking all 85 million of its viewers on a trip through the Backrooms found footage style. Remember him and his short films for later. As you probably already know if you clicked on this video, a brand new Backrooms movie just came out in theaters and it's doing really well. We're talking Studio A24's highest grossing film ever in just the first 2 weeks of release, and clocking $212 million at the box office globally. That well. What you might not know is that 20-year-old Kane Pixels is the one who directed it, as in the same director from the original shorts, which explains a lot, considering the new movie is a huge nod to the original YouTube films. And this next part to me is wild, because that also means that the same person that perfectly recreated that grungy 90s era quality so well that it's giving a ton of us millennials massive liminal nostalgia, myself included, never actually lived to see it. Major props to him for that. We're going to talk much more about the movie in part 2 of this series, so stay tuned for that. After Kane's short films went up online, the Backrooms legend was everywhere. Writers came up with short horror stories and published them all over Reddit. World builders crafted layers upon layers of lore, everything from different levels of Backrooms, some that looked different than the original and were more dangerous than others, to hostile creatures and shadow entities that lurked around every corner. Indie game developers then spawned several hundred liminal space video games on Steam. Yeah, seriously, take a look, I'm not kidding, it's crazy. The massive gaming platform Roblox also got its own version, visited by players over 120 million times. And then there's TikTok. Over there, the liminal spaces hashtag has clocked more than 4.2 billion views, while the Backrooms hashtag has a totally viral and honestly utterly insane 16.5 billion views. But the thing is, even though all of that may have come from this one subtly creepy image, internet message boards didn't invent liminal spaces. They actually just rediscovered them. This concept first showed up in Latin as the word limen, meaning doorway, threshold, or beginning. Again, super transitional, just like our modern understanding of it. You might also recognize the term from sister words subliminal, as in below the threshold of consciousness, and eliminate, to literally cast out from the threshold. The word started appearing more and more in the 1870s to describe sensory and psychological thresholds after that. But it didn't really get going until around 1909. That's when ethnographer and folklorist, side note, how cool is that title? Like, how long do I have to do this show before I can be called a folklorist? I'm kidding, but you get the idea, it's awesome. Anyway, ethnographer Arnold van Gennep published his work, The Rites of Passage. The book describes a pattern for how societies organize transitions as they change and develop, and in his case, how rituals and societal behaviors change when the people performing them change. Or how individuals do, like the cycles of birth, the coming of age, marriage, and death. You get the idea. According to Gennep, there are 3 main phases. First, separation, when a society separates and changes from its previous state. Simple enough. 2, transition, the middle phase between the old and the new states. And 3, incorporation, embracing the new state. But that middle phase is the one we're talking about here. To quote a great article that I read on it, the middle phase, the threshold, is where liminality lives, between one chapter of life and the next. Anthropologist Victor Turner expanded that idea later in the 1960s to look at how modern societies transform over time. But even more so than Gennep, Turner saw liminality as a distinct space or a kind of condition that something can be in. A place where it becomes possible for something new to come out exactly because the normal rules and structure that contain things aren't there. I think this commentary captures it particularly well. Quote, "A liminal space is a place of transition, an in-between space that exists on the boundary of what came before and what has not yet arrived. It can be a physical place. It can also be a psychological state. a transitional period in a life where the old structure has dissolved and the new one has not yet formed. But there's also another element, filled in my opinion, by this comment from the Liminal Space subreddit. Quote, "Liminal space is where all transformation takes place, if we learn to wait and let it form us." And yet, if you ask me, there is still one more element. A lot of people say liminal images remind them of childhood, places that they've been to but can't quite place in their minds. Maybe that's partly because of how our brains process memories during times of transition, making something universal feel like an oddly kind of personal experience. But it's also because liminal spaces feel, quote, "caught between past and present," and become impossible to locate in time. So, if liminality is something that virtually every person experiences just by nature of going through life's normal changes, why is it so unsettling? Well, in 2022, a couple of scientists from Cardiff University in Wales decided that they wanted to find out too. To start their research, they asked one major question. If the main quality that makes a physical space liminal is the same thing that somehow makes it feel off, like it's just almost normal but misses the mark just a teeny bit, what else do we, people, have that reaction to? Turns out the answer lies in a pretty obscure essay from back in 1970 titled The Uncanny Valley. Sound familiar? In it, Japanese robotics engineer Masahiro Mori introduced the world to that namesake concept. Basically, the idea that when a robot starts to look a little bit like a human, real people tend to like those more than just strictly machine-looking counterparts. But when robots start looking really, really human and super lifelike, but are just a tiny bit off, like we said earlier, they suddenly become extremely off-putting to actual humans. Back to the psychologists from Wales and their experiments, they wanted to find out if the reaction people were having to liminal spaces, aka architecture and environments, was the same reaction they have to Uncanny Valley robots, or mannequins, or dolls, or CGI humans. Side note, anyone remember the Polar Express movie? I saw that sucker in IMAX as a kid, and it was a really great movie, but it was somehow terrifying, and it wasn't supposed to be a horror movie. I blame the soulless eyes, personally. Anyway, it turns out the same things that make the robots freaky makes liminality freaky to us. Over the course of 3 experiments, the researchers found that mostly realistic environments that deviate from normal expectations just a little bit, just enough to look wrong, are what psych us out. They tested factors like slightly distorted proportions, unusual room layouts, unexpectedly repeating patterns, structural anomalies, and misplaced objects that should be somewhere else, like, say, a toilet, but in a living room. Yeah. Basically, the exact same kind of oddness that shows up in the Backrooms images. The various participants in the study that looked at these spaces reported that all of these elements individually gave them the Uncanny Valley effect to some degree. As for the most consistently uncanny element of any room, though, hallways came in as the #1 most uncanny kind of physical space tested. In other words, the same kind of space that dominates liminal space images online. Our brains are constantly working in overdrive, not just to perceive what's around us, but to anticipate and make assumptions about parts of our environment to fill in the gaps of our perception, if you will. For instance, you may not know this, but there's actually a gap in your retina, the part of your eye that converts the light that you see into visual information that you can interpret. But you don't realize there's a hole there because your brain constructs what it believes should be in that hole for you. Meaning, our minds have an understanding of how environments should be, and liminal spaces violate those expectations. Like in the forest when all suddenly goes quiet, and you know by instinct that something is very, very wrong. This all gets extra weird when you realize that the best and most interesting part of the whole 2022 findings has to do with the presence or lack thereof of people in our environments, and how it changes everything. The researchers found a surprising inverted kind of trend. In images of public spaces, the presence of other people in the space made things feel more normal, In other words, there was no uncanniness. An airport doesn't look weird if there are lots of people in it, but an empty airport does look weird. Like this video that I personally shot back in March 2020 during the whole pandemic era at New York's LaGuardia Airport. Plus this one from July 2020 at Orlando International Airport, and also this one of an empty New York City subway car from the same year. I can also tell you that from personal experience, walking through New York City's Times Square during the COVID era, by the way, don't worry about the lockdown situation, I have a press badge and I was considered an essential worker at this time. However, walking through this area that's normally bustling and busy in one of the most crowded places in the world, when it was completely empty and looked like a ghost town, was very, very unsettling. On the other hand, in private spaces like a room or a hallway, well, if your brain expects your living room to be empty, but you suddenly see a shadowy stranger standing in the middle of it, or worse, peeking out from behind a doorway, things get really creepy really fast. One other part of this study that I thought was particularly interesting, so many liminal space images are characterized by the exact same kind of lighting, fluorescent lighting. There is a ton of scientific research suggesting that this kind of light can produce all kinds of ill effects, like higher stress levels and anxiety, headaches and migraines, me included on that one, by the way, and they can also even mess up your circadian rhythm and your sleep to some extent. This is mostly because fluorescence is a totally different kind of light than is produced naturally by the sun. Unlike the continuous full rainbow spectrum produced by natural light, fluorescence produces a discontinuous one, meaning that there are holes and gaps in the range of light wavelengths that it creates. Fluorescent bulbs also cycle on and off dozens or even over 100 times per second, and while your eyes might not notice that inherent flickering, your brain definitely does. All that said, despite this lighting being one of the most common elements in liminal images, the 2022 study found that participants talked way more about architecture and physical space than they did about lighting. Now, maybe that's just because fewer people take conscious notice of the lighting in a given space. Or maybe it's because the lighting contributed, but it just didn't have as much of an impact as the other elements, like the misplaced objects. Who knows? But I, for one, don't think liminal spaces would hit the same without that eerie hum and harsh glow coming from the ceiling. Okay, so far we've covered the science and the psychology of liminal spaces, and the history of the word itself. We've seen how endless hallways, impossible architecture, and environments that exist in an architectural uncanny valley, even if there isn't a monster jumping out to scare us, make the hairs on the back of our necks stand straight up. But there's still something missing. All of that tells us why these spaces feel strange to us, but not why they feel also familiar. Why you get hit with a wave of nostalgia when you see an empty mall, or the weirdly intense melancholy you get looking at an empty 90s school classroom. I was talking to you all during a live chat pretty recently about all this, and I know you guys hate cliffhangers just as much as I do. However, next week we're going beyond psychology. We're going to look at what the new Backrooms movie really got right, and also what it got really wrong about the nature of liminal spaces. We're going to explore why this unique phenomena goes all the way back to, believe it or not, ancient history, plus myths about doorways between worlds, and we're also going to dive into a feeling that virtually every single human being experiences, but yet has no name. And, with any luck, we'll answer the biggest question of all. Why the true pull of liminal spaces may have less to do with fear and a lot more to do with memory. But what do you think about liminal spaces? Are they just an odd feeling that comes up when a place violates the rules that our brains have kind of already pre-established? Or are they markers of a much deeper and universal human experience? I would love to hear your thoughts all about this in the comments, and if you have an idea for something you'd like to see a future episode on, let me know. I read all those comments and they're all going onto my ideas list when I get them. Also, I want to thank those of you who have been joining the live premieres of these videos lately. Not only do I love chatting with you guys, but you all gave me some really good feedback when I was working on this particular series of episodes. Anyways, part 2 is coming next week, and probably part 3 after that. If you enjoyed this deep dive into mysteries, myths, culture, and science, please take just 1 second to like and share this video, hit the hype button, which is the latest way to tell YouTube that you like what you see, and if you want to see more, subscribe. It really helps get the word out there about the show. Until next time, stay curious and stay legendary. And also, real quick before you go, YouTube thinks you will like this video next, so you might want to check it out. Thank you so much.